Welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast. I am Kristen Boyce, a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice, Pathways to Healing Counseling. Through conversations, education, strategies, and shared stories, we will be closing the chapter on all the thoughts, feelings, people, and circumstances that don't serve you anymore and open the door to possibilities and the real you. You won't want to miss an episode, so be sure to subscribe. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. Thank you so much for joining me for this important episode as we talk about how do we start creating a sense of feeling like we belong. How many times have you felt like you're in a group of friends and like you just don't belong? Or you're out in the world and you don't feel connected to anybody. You feel different. You feel like there's something wrong with you. You feel lonely. In this episode, we're going to be talking about authenticity and how that leads to feeling that connection and sense of belonging. We're going to break down really how do we even start connecting with ourselves and with others. It's an important episode. And I just want to say thank you for sharing this podcast truly from the bottom of my heart. This would not be possible without you sharing on social media, posting about your episodes that you found super helpful and transformative, sharing with friends, loved ones, family, coworkers, neighbors. Thank you so much. And I cherish hearing how the podcast has impacted their lives. So thank you so much for your support and encouragement. I just so thankful for you. And if no one has told you today that you matter, you're important and you're loved and you're enough, and the shame wants to tell you you've messed up, you're a terrible person, you're a bad mom or dad, or you're just not worthy, I'm here to tell you you are worthy. And you've come to this episode for a reason. So thank you for listening. And let me introduce you to this week's guest because she needs an intro. It was born in Toronto, Canada, and she's an award-winning speaker, author, expert in belonging, equality, equity, leadership, and empowerment. And she's written several books. She's written The Authenticity Principle, which is about the proof that what can happen when you stand in your power, fighting the hardships that come along your way. And she currently has a new book out. We've got this, Unlocking the Beauty of Belonging. And she loves to travel, eat, swim, dance, and work. And we had a delightful conversation about how she even got started in this work and her journey through her own hardships. And how did she find a sense of belonging? So as a companion to this episode, I love to give people the free guide, the free journal, and you can reuse it so many times, available now for free at Kristen, Kristen, D Boyce, BOICE.com/free resources. And without further ado, here is my helpful and impactful conversation. I hope you would enjoy it. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. I am delighted you're here with us today. We are going to be exploring authenticity, kind of how we get a sense of belonging and the journey to get there, because we know it's not as easy as just be authentic and everything's going to just flow from there. We know there's so much more to it, and we've kind of used this authentic buzzword around. So we're going to kind of deconstruct that. We're going to look at how do we gain a sense of belonging within ourselves, and then how does that translate into a sense of belonging with others? So without further ado, I'd love to introduce my guest, Ritu Basan. Did I say the last name correctly?
It's Basine.
Basine. I was close. My brain glitches when it comes to like pronunciation. So I appreciate your patience with me getting it just right. So welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad you're here to talk all things authenticity, and belonging, because you've got two books. Tell us about the journey to focusing your work on authenticity and belonging.
I have had quite a winding road, I would say, in my journey to claim belonging. I am the daughter of Indian immigrant parents. And so my parents immigrated from India to now Canada over 50 years ago. And I live in Canada. And I have a quintessential story of being a child of immigrants. where I watched my parents struggle, a front row seat to watching them struggle in so many ways. And it hurt me a lot to see them go through that experience. But I also had my own experiences with confronting inequities growing up. And so when I was young, around the age of 11, my parents moved us from a very working class, actually quite diverse neighborhood that was on the inside of Toronto. It was like the inner city. And they moved us to a really homogeneous, white, extremely affluent neighborhood outside of the city, which was a massive financial stretch for them to do that. And they did it because they wanted us essentially to access better education and social networks and experiences that they didn't have as new immigrants to the country. And all of that was borne out. The problem is that I endured years and years of relentless racist childhood bullying that was also classist and intersected with being a smart girl at the time, thinking like late 80s, early 90s. And so from a young age, I learned that something was wrong with me, that I shouldn't be who I am, that I'm broken, and that I should mask what actually sets me apart, makes me unique in favor of conformity to the dominant cultural way of being. And I took this way of life and way of being, which actually was a really good coping mechanism, into my adulthood when I joined the most high conforming profession out there, or one of them, the legal profession. I became a lawyer and I worked in the big towers, and I spent 10 years in the legal profession, first practicing and then doing talent management. And what I noticed in the corporate world and the legal profession is that the messages around conformity were never as direct and overt when I was being bullied as a child, but they were there. And so while I became really successful in my mid 30s, if you had asked me, how do you feel about your life? I would have said to you, I'm actually deeply unhappy. It took me a while to actually finally name it, but I could finally say I'm really unhappy. And things happened, and I essentially committed to changing how I live, to transforming my life so that I could stand in my power, claim my belonging, be who I am, and live a life filled with as much joy as possible because I deserve it. That is a really quick overview of my journey of learning how to belong and why teaching others about how to claim belonging is so important.
This is such a deep dive because all of us can relate. You have your own unique journey, but conformity is, we're conditioned in so many ways to conform in order to feel like, to fight the shame, to fight the rejection, abandonment. So we're taught, do these things and you'll be lovable, likable, worthy, and valued. So tell me about how you started the journey of kind of deconstructing conformity, and where did that all begin?
It's interesting because despite experiencing all the hurtful and hateful things that were coming my way as a child, and moving from a place of being a really spunky, outgoing, confident little girl, and I talk about this a lot in my new book, We've Got This Unlocking the Beauty of Belonging, that I came into this world as a firecracker. Like I was a firecracker. But the problem is that the weight of the world and the negative messaging and the hurtful messaging started to take me down and erode my inherent sense of confidence and self-worth and self-love. And I always knew, despite all the negative stuff coming my way and the pain I was carrying inside me, I always knew that first I was experiencing injustice. I knew that what was happening to me was wrong. Like, it wasn't like I was like, oh my gosh, yes, like I deserve to be bullied. And thank you so much for like actually recognizing what a loser I am. It was always like, this is wrong. I felt powerless in the face of it to do anything. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that a part of me always knew I deserved more, and that I knew that I had a spark inside of me. I always held those two truths while everything was happening. I'm thinking back to how my teenage years were like in the 90s when we didn't have the internet really, and really slash at all. Or I certainly didn't know of it. And we didn't have self-help apps. We didn't have mobile phones. What we had was TV, talk shows, and books. And that is exactly what I did as someone who really nerdy, like really smart, nerdy, but also hungry to be better. Even in my teenage years, I did what we did in the 90s. I watched a shit ton of Oprah and other self-help shows, devoured them. And then any books they referred to, I would read them. So like, I remember being like 15, 16 years old and reading The Seed of the Soul by Gary Vukoff and like barely understanding any of it. But it was like, that's okay because I'm reading it. What I started to realize is, wow, there's a community of people out there who are hurting too. I am not alone. So by the time I hit my 20s, I was 20 years old. I'm in college, university in Canada, and I saw a poster for free counseling on campus. And I had already known about the value and benefits of counseling therapy because of reading all the books and watching Queen O. And so I decided to do it. Now, here's what's really interesting, Kristen. So when I say like I was 20 years old, this would have been like 1995. Going to therapy was number one, unheard of. And number two, like no one talked about it. There was so much stigma. And I remember walking into the student center, I'm 20 years old, to go to my first appointment. And I make sure that very few people are in the hallway and no one I recognize. And I make a beeline for the therapy office. Whereas now it'd be like, ain't no thing. I mean, it was a thing. I didn't tell anyone I was really doing it, or a few people I told. But that experience at the age of 20 for me unlocked a continued healing journey. And, you know, it's like I'm now in my late 40s and I think about how I've had 30 years, almost 30 years of therapy. Like there's only a few 1-year periods in those 30 years that I have not had therapy. But even those years I was reading and I'm doing weekend retreats and my journaling. I'm a seeker and I desire to be better. And so for those of you joining today where you're like, I want to live better and I just don't know how, and I'm really struggling and my words are resonating with you, one of the greatest things that I have learned along my journey is that for some people, a massive thing happens, a cataclysmic experience that, or not, could be cataclysmic, or it could be like a massive transformative, life altering, positive experience happens that thrusts people into this ultimate new way of living. That was not my experience. My experience has been that it's like one building block on top of another and one small shift and then another small shift. And I'm still in my journey, along my journey to heal and be better. But what I can tell you as someone who deeply struggled with feeling joy in her life, feeling like I belonged, feeling worthy, is that I have now crossed over to the other side and it feels so beautiful. And it's still a journey because I have shitty days too. And this past weekend, I got in a very bad argument with my spouse and I was not my best. And I was like, oof, that is not who I want to be. And then I'm reminding myself I still have trauma inside me. I absorbed all kinds of negative messaging. I'm a work in progress and life is a journey, but we continue to do these little shifts so that ultimately we cross over and we continue on our journey. And so what's like one small thing that you can change about how you're living after today to stand more in your power or to heal the woundedness within or to be more of who you are? It's these small changes, these shifts that matter. Is this resonating, Kristen?
Yes, totally. Because I think this is the journey for all of us. There's no finish line. We're like, we're never going to struggle with that again. That's the misnomer about self-help. People think, well, I've
Yes.
been in therapy and why does this still bother
Yeah,
me? I'm
right.
like, because you're human.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
different experiences will activate different parts of you that you thought, oh, I thought I was over this. And then all of a sudden you're right back there. And
That's
that's
it.
okay. And I think all of us humanizing ourselves and acknowledging that is so helpful to other people to feel less alone.
You got it. Yes.
I'm looking at your journey and I'm like, okay, you were the attorney, you were the corporate, you seemingly had it all. I mean, kind of,
No, I was
right?
living the corporate dream, like on
Living the
all accounts.
corporate dream, making the
Like,
money.
right.
When did you have this awakening? I know it's a slow awakening, a slow unfolding, but to get the courage to leave that position, people get scared. They're like, what am I going to do? What about the money? How did you
All
get
of
to the
that.
point where you said, I need to make a change?
So there were a few things that happened that I share again in my book, We've Got This, and my first book, The Authenticity Principle. But in a nutshell, what ultimately ended up happening for me that led me to be like, no, I am changing my life is that my body started to scream. I am not happy. I am not good. You, Ritu Basin, you are not good. We are not good. We are not good. And so it's interesting when we map my journey along what has happened in research and society around acceptance of us as humans not being mind-based creatures, but actually being body-based creatures. So in the 80s and 90s, when I was younger, I focused a lot on the mind And so I read books and I did talk therapy. And the 2000s, I did talk therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and journaled. And I went to retreats and self-coached and all of that. And that was in an alignment with what we knew back then around how to heal. And when I say we knew, mainstream culture knew, because here's the thing. I come from Indian culture. I come from an ancient indigenous culture that knew thousands of years ago that healing isn't a mind thing. Primarily, it is a body-based experience, because I come from the seat of where yoga was created. And a lot of the breath work that we do today and mindfulness practices stem from the thousands of years of ancestral experiences that are in my genetics and bloodline. So many cultures around the world already knew this, but I would say here in Canada and the US, in the Anglo-rooted world, it's like there was an awakening research, in many respects, appropriation of ancient indigenous practices of moving more towards being body-based. Here's what I would say. I can't even tell you the modalities of therapy I have done and the type of healing experiences I've had. Like, you name it, I've probably tried it. And what I can tell you that really helped me to tip into deepening my trauma healing has been me focusing on my body. So by the time I hit my early 30s, I was really good on the mind-based stuff because it was on vogue, it was on trend, it was what was happening. But it wasn't until I started to realize my body is screaming that I'm unhappy. So what do I mean by that, everyone? And I talk about this, and we've got this. I had lived through decades of digestive problems, and I had been poked and prodded for just about everything, and then told, you know what, you've got IBS, which, I mean, I don't even know, do I have it? Do I not have it now? Because of all the healing work that I've done, like, I largely say I've healed my digestive problems through all of my deep trauma work and making some shifts in how I eat. I clenched my teeth so hard at night, I cracked a tooth. My hair stopped growing for months. I remember that in my 30s. But the thing that tipped me over into what is going on with me and actually unlocked for me my body-based healing journey is there I was working in the corporate towers in the legal profession, and I started to have excruciating lower back pain, which should not have been happening because I was young in my 30s and worked out and was active and all of that. Anyways, long story short, I go to a few different therapists, healer types, like physiotherapist and a chiro and blah, blah, blah. And all of them said the same thing. You need to strengthen your core. And so you should try Pilates or yoga. And I was like, you know what? Like, I am a brown girl and my people like technically invented yoga. And so I think I'm going to do yoga and not Pilates because it's, how hard can this be? Like, my people invented it. It's in my bloodline, whatever. And I go to my first yoga class and I'm like the only brown person and it's all a bunch of white people. And I'm like, what is this? So challenging. And I was like, this is not natural for me. This is so hard, but it felt good. And so I kept doing it and doing it. Long story short, years later, did I not find myself on a yoga mat in the south of India doing my first yoga teacher training certification because I just fell in love with the practice. And when I say practice, I don't mean the asana practice. I mean like yogic way of living, yoga being union, a holistic way of living, was already how I was living more or less because of my cultural upbringing, my parental upbringing. But there were aspects of it I wasn't tuning into because I viewed yoga as being more of a stretch experience and a cool thing we did to back then to fitness and that type of experience, as opposed to, no, this is like a way to release and discharge energy and tap into my body. And so that experience of learning to really go within and tune in and recognize, wow, I'm feeling stressed here. I feel agitation. I feel sensation in my chest. And actually, if I take a step back, I'm noticing I'm taking shallower breaths. And actually, if I dig even deeper, I'm feeling pain in my left scap. And actually, in my mind, I'm saying all kinds of negative things to myself right now about myself. I'm not happy in this moment. Let me tune in. And what am I going to do about this? That's really where my deep healing kicked in and has profoundly transformed how I live. And again, I'm a work in progress. I know I have so much more to go. Like, even before we came on today, I'm feeling so stressed all morning because I'm behind a bunch of things. I have so much work to do. I haven't filed my taxes. I'm like, my home is a mess. I just came off of writing a book, a 2-year period. And so many aspects of my life are like not organized, and I'm struggling to keep on top of things. And there's a lot of negative self-talk in my head about it. I feel the stress in my body, and I still know the tools and I'm supposed to use those tools, but I'm human. But the point is that I'm still better situated than I was years ago when I wasn't tuned in. Does that connect with you, Kristen?
Body work is essential, I think, because we know trauma, those unprocessed emotions is in your body and it needs to come up and out to free you. And so we can be frozen in time. So if you've had a trauma at 5, you're kind of all of that is frozen in the nervous system. And yoga is a great way to unfreeze it and move it up and out. So I'm a firm believer in it. And I think it can be transformative.
Yeah. And even how about this? Because we've got this, I talk a lot about emotional release and how we learn as adults to override. And as humans, the ability to override our emotions, unlike other animals that do not have that ability. And it's both a blessing and a curse in some respects, because when we override our autonomic responses to experiences and we don't come back to releasing them from our bodies, they can get trapped in our bodies. And this is what ultimately leads to the dysregulation of the nervous system, which I talk quite a bit about across all the stuff I do. I didn't realize this. Now that I know this, when I feel like I need to cry, I just cry. Or how about this? Sometimes I want to cry during the middle of the workday, or I'm in a meeting, or I'm on a stage speaking, or I'm in a place where I'm like, I can't become unraveled right now. But that's okay, because here's the thing, I can come back to it. And so I'm going to leave you with the following takeaway, everyone. After today, the next time you notice that in your body, there's like an automatic desire to do something, shake, twitch, tremble, cry, even scream, notice yourself saying, no, not now. That's okay. Clock that moment. And then I'm going to invite you to come back to that moment at night, on the weekend, like whenever you have some private time. And when I say come back to the moment, like lie down on your couch, be in your bed, like you're in the bathtub taking a bubble bath, wherever it is, whenever it is, take yourself back to the moment. And you can help yourself. Like you can some music, you can light a candle, you can snuggle with your fur baby or whatever it is that you like. I love to cuddle with a heating pad because I find heat on my body helps to signal to my body I'm safe and helps to ease into that discharge space. So whatever it is that you need, and then take yourself back to the moment and see what feelings come up and clock the sensation in your body and think about what's in your mind. And then as the emotion starts to come up, let it out and just let it out and just let it out in a non-judgmental way. And so it's a bit like scheduling a pity party for yourself or a crying party for yourself. And that's okay. Or a shaking party or a twitching party or like whatever it is. And that is okay. Because here's the thing, when we override our emotions and are like, no, not now, it's not like the emotion sensations disappear into the ether and then we're done and like, bye. It's like they can get trapped in our bodies. And so my hope is that we have a world one day where the shame that we attach to certain emotions lifts. And we can be in a place where in our workplaces, in our homes, in our relationships, classrooms, we can honor the truth of how people actually feel because it is healthy, it is normal, it is needed for us to cry and to feel sad and to feel tender and vulnerable and feel shame and insecure and angry. And it's important that we honor that we have these feelings and that we let them out.
I had experience of this just to kind of bring this home for the listeners. Yesterday, I went with a couple friends who are also therapists, by the way. So we're in the car and I woke up and I just felt off. My body felt off. I felt off and I could tap in. We were playing music in the car and all of a sudden just a wave of grief just came up, sadness. And I kind of wanted to retreat because I was like, I don't want to ruin the girls' trip. I don't want them to think that what's wrong with me. I had all my younger parts online just feeling like, oh, I shouldn't even share this. And then I was able to listen to the music, get some courage up to be vulnerable and share my sadness and what was going on and be transparent and tell the shame story about my shame story was I'm going to ruin the trip and you guys are going to think I don't have it all together. You're going to think, whoa, what's judgment? I was
Why'd
afraid
we
of
invite
judgment.
her? Who invited
Judgment.
her?
Yeah. So then I was like, I was afraid of judgment. So I just said the shame story out loud.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, now I connect to you more because you're sharing more vulnerably in the tenderness. And it's not always received that way by other people. So I don't want to paint that picture like, and everybody kumbayas over it. And it was scary for me to share. And I want people to know, like, even as therapists, even as you're doing all this work, it can be scary to share what's really going on because we're afraid of judgment. We're afraid of not being liked. We're afraid of what people will think about us. And what do you say to that as we kind of wrap up? Because I think that's the number one thing that prevents people from being authentic. Trauma, of course, our history, but this fear of rejection and people thinking, oh, she's kind of got issues. What's wrong with
Yeah.
her? So we don't want to show that side. So, how do you help people move through the fear of what people think, rejection, and abandonment?
I have so much to say about this. So, first of all, what's fascinating is that for so long, I held the deep belief that if I revealed my vulnerabilities, my insecurities, my shame to people, they will like me less. And because of this, I came to armor up with what I call my PPA armor. And PPA stands for positivity, perfection, achievement. And I thought if I'm just positive and sunshine Ritu all the time and I'm perfect at everything I do and I'm achieve, then you won't judge me. Then you won't take opportunities away. Then you'll love me. And here's what I realized, that actually that veneer, that curated, what I often call performing self mask, performing in the sense of like not high performance, but I'm like acting Ritu as opposed to being Ritu, or you're acting who you think people want you to be as opposed to being who you are. What I realized is that first of all, people could clock I wasn't being me, because authenticity is a lot like a magnet. Like we sense it and gauge it in others. It's an energetic vibration. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is this, that the more I started to reveal who I am and my shame and my pain and how I'm journeying and struggling like everyone else is, the more people liked me and the more they gravitated towards me. And it was the opposite effect. And why does this happen? So first of all, like, why do we shield, hide, mask, armor up with our PPA and our performing self mask, all that? We do this because of a fear of bias. And I can tell you based on my work and research in this space for years and years, it's the fear of bias. You're going to judge me. You're going to hate on me. You're not going to like me that causes us to act this way. However, what I can also tell you, since I've now come to the other side, because I was the queen of performing and the PPA, like I invented the PPA, like literally and figuratively, that actually we feel the fear of being judged and we do it anyways. And we do it anyways because this is what leads to a joyful life. But let me break this down a bit more. In order to experience belonging, be honored and accepted for who we are, we must commit to a life of authenticity. By being who we are, by being authentic, that is what unlocks belonging. Belonging is the outcome of being authentic. And in order to belong, first and foremost, we must belong to ourselves. Listeners, you must belong to yourselves, which means you must be authentic with yourself for yourself. You must know who you are, embrace who you are, and be who you are with your own self, first and foremost. And this is what will inspire you and empower you to claim belonging with others and demand that others honor you for who you are. And when they don't, the response will not break your heart, or maybe it will break your heart, but you'll say, F that, I live for me anyways, as opposed to live for others. Because why? You belong to yourself. And if others don't want to give you belonging, fine, because you belong to yourself. I didn't know that. I now know that. I talk a lot about this online in my books, but here's a takeaway for you all. How do we make this happen? Like, how do we actually unlock this and make this happen? As you've been listening to me speak, everyone, first of all, I'm going to invite you to clock what has been happening in your minds, what sensation and emotions have you been feeling go through your body, breathing it in and breathing it out, just honoring whatever has been coming up. But what's one thing about yourself, as I've been speaking, that keeps coming up, surfacing? What's one thing about yourself that you have not been sharing with others, that you've been hiding or masking, changing, that after today, you'll start to reveal? And it can be small. It doesn't have to be big. It can be how you dress. It can be, you know what? My comment about emotional release really resonated with you because you noticed that like you just do not cry ever, or you constantly feel like the pressure to be like so happy and like so sunshiny, even though you're not. And after today, the one thing you're going to start to do is tell your spouse, actually, I'm not fine. Or tell your leader, I am not fine. I'm actually quite upset. Or when next time someone says to you, how are you? Instead of saying, fine, good, busy, you're going to say, actually, I'm really frazzled right now. Kids are driving me bananas and I haven't bathed in 4 days and like whatever. Just one thing about yourself you're going to change after today. Because again, most human behavior, it's not massive shifts, 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. It's micro behavioral shifts. What's one thing? And then as you do that one thing, you'll start to do another thing and you'll start to do another thing. And then what you'll notice is that it's this cascading effect of being who we are, which is so good and safe to do. And you'll think back to your journey and you'll be like, I can't even believe I wouldn't talk about ABC. And now I'm like, everyone knows ABC and I'm going deeper. Like I'm on like XYZ. So one thing, just commit to one thing after today.
I love it. One thing that feels more manageable, because we can intellectually think all this, but it's another thing to actually have the courage to take the masks off, to be brave and say how you really feel. Find feelings inside not expressed. So what are you not expressing that needs to come out and be released? This has been awesome. I love our conversation. Where can people find your books and more about you?
Oh, bless. So first of all, you can find my books online, anywhere books are sold. We've got this, Unlocking the Beauty of Belonging, the Authenticity Principle, which is all about how you live an authentic life, live, work, and lead authentically. And you can connect with me online. My empowerment site is ritubhasin.com. It's Ritu, R-I-T-U, Bhasin, B-H-A-S-I-N, ritubhasin.com. It's filled with free resources and tip sheets and checklists and videos and blogs on how do you live a more authentic, empowered life rooted in belonging. And then connect with me across social media. I'm on almost every platform. My favorite places, though, I would say are Instagram and LinkedIn. And then I have a truckload of videos on YouTube. So hopefully that helps. And everyone, I love getting messages. So do not be shy, reach out.
Awesome. What's one thing you want to just have people take away from our conversation or about your work? One thing.
Here's one thing that I have been sitting with and thinking a lot about and actually feeling. I talk a lot about honoring the pain and the hurt that lives inside of us and releasing it and letting it go and offering it to the earth so that we can live a more joyful life. But one of the things that I have been playing with for myself and really deeply anchoring into is rebuilding my capacity to experience joy in my body. What do I mean by that? When I was a little kid, I remember like being young and being joyful, like playing and eating sand and throwing sand and just laughing. And over time, that joy got smothered by pain and then me denying the pain and acting happy as opposed to actually feeling happy and being happy. And the last few years have been really hard for me personally and professionally for a myriad reasons. And what I've noticed is that I've done a really good job with all these hard things happening to honor the pain and release the pain. But what I haven't done as much of that I'm now starting to do is really experience joy in my body. So not just think joy, like as in like, wow, this is a really great moment. I'm with my friends on a girls' trip and this is so nice and I love them and I love this food and isn't this mountain beautiful, which is often what I do with joy. And instead I'm like, felt that rush of gratitude rip through my heart center and through my chest into my belly. And now my eyes are starting to water and I just feel warmth. And even actually, as I share this, I'm starting to feel the whoosh inside me. Ooh, yeah, it's here. Just feeling gratitude and actually feeling it in the body and being with that joy so that we no longer are just thinking joy, we're feeling it in our body. That's my takeaway, everyone. Honor your pain, let it out, but also let the wash of joy encase you.
That is so good. That's a great reminder because I can identify with what you're saying. I totally can because we have so much going on and we're so busy and we're doing this and we're doing that, that we can think about the joy, but to actually embody and integrate it into your heart center, into your nervous system, into your body is a whole experience.
Yeah.
So I love that reminder. So thank you so much for your work. Go get the books and check out your website. And thank you for your time and your energy. Yay! Congratulations. That's so exciting.
Thank you, Kristen, for having me. Thank you, listeners, for joining us. Reach out. Again, I love getting messages and be well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to the Close the Chapter podcast. My hope is that you took home some actionable steps along with motivation, inspiration, and hope for making sustainable change in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, click the subscribe button to be sure to get the updated episodes every week and share with a friend or a family member. For more information about how to get connected, visit Kristen, Kristen, Boyce, Boice.com. Thanks and have a great day.